Welcome to Academy Live. Today we have Jeff Wolverton, CEO and founder of PivIT Strategy, with us. He's going to talk a little bit about his involvement with the Phoenix peer groups and now the Orion peer group. And he's going to highlight a little how these experiences have shaped his business growth and leadership. So, right now, I would love to not waste any time and invite Jeff right on the show. So, welcome, Jeff, to Academy Live.
Hey,
Jeff,
everybody.
so good to see you. I really enjoyed catching up with you last week at the peer group accountability meetings. I really appreciate you taking some time to talk with me. Glad to have you here. I kind of want to start off by having you introduce yourself and kind of tell us a little bit about PivIT Strategy. And especially in 2021, kind of paint us a little picture about you and your company.
Perfect. Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, everybody. I'm Jeff Wolverton, again, CEO of PivIT Strategy. We're based in the sunshiny Charlotte, North Carolina. Little bit about me, I've got my gray hair. It shows that I've been doing this for a while. I started as a developer out of college years ago. I've had technical roles in financial services. I've been a financial CIO for financial services. I've worked for small, medium-sized businesses, having business responsibility. And I wanted to end my career doing what I'm doing now, and that is IT managed services, IT consulting. So I started PivIT Strategy in 2021. I was able to acquire a couple customers from my prior company to give me a little bit of juice to get things going. But we've been growing ever since 2021. Here we are in 2025, and we've been very fortunate with some great growth and success.
That's awesome. I got to tell you, PivIT Strategies. Every time I hear the word, I think of that Friends episode with Ross on the couch, carrying the couch up the stairs, yelling, "Pivot, pivot,
Pivot, pivot."
PIVIT, not PIVOT.
Got it.
One of the things that really kind of connects us, we met through the peer group program, but I want to kind of take a step back and kind of ask, how did that even start? Is that something you were looking for? How did you find out about the peer groups?
Yeah, I touched really quickly on the things that I've done throughout my career. When I started PivIT Strategy, even though I've led businesses before, it was daunting and confusing. And where do you start? And where do you prioritize? And where do you spend your time? I've had great experience in the past of why recreate the wheel? Why not learn from people who've done this before? I've been to and getting recommendations, what conferences to go to. We are a ConnectWise customer, so I've been to IT Nation, and Pax8 was introduced to me very early. So just going to the Pax8 conferences and the constant conversation about getting a peer group, it appealed to me. Gosh, it feels like often I was working out in the basement with no lights on. Who's watching? Who cares? How do you know if you're successful? Are you doing this right? How wonderful would it be to bounce this off of some other folks who are going through the same thing? And so really, maybe one of the bigger challenges, or my biggest possible apprehension, was just the time commitment. As you hear, gosh, I got to commit an hour and a half a week. Can I commit that time? And then guess what? You have action items coming out of these meetings. So there's some things you got to do when you're not in the meetings, and you think about that, having to make that time. But I think what really drove me to get signed up was that ability to collaborate with others in the same boat, work with facilitators that have been there and done that, to really help figure out how to be successful at this.
It's a good segue, actually. I want to hear.
We often talk about the 10% of your time commitment to work on your business, right? So often it's 1 hour a week, on with whoever you're working with, and then 3 hours of homework. Phoenix is a 90-minute commitment, and then we look for 2.5 hours of working on the business every single week. That 10% of your time sounds like a small number, but it's really a big commitment.
Yeah, it is. But I think what you have to be thinking about is it's not that it's something on the side that doesn't apply to your everyday work. This is when you talk about working on the business, what could be more important than that, right? So you have to think about this isn't some other commitment to do a project that you're going to throw away and have a lessons learned. A lot of this work is, for example, we work through a flight plan. The flight plan has fundamentals in it. We spent really the first couple months as a group talking about our tech stack. What a daunting task as to what's going to be in your tech stack. And living in a vacuum, that's tough. Having a facilitator and a team of 8 peers to walk you through that, to help you make some of those decisions. If you're doing that work outside of the hour and a half commitment, what better work should you be working on? This is figuring out the base foundation for your company.
We bring these members in, and they all they seem to want to do in the first few meetings of these Phoenix peer groups is talk tech, right? Because they're technicians that had an entrepreneurial seizure and started a business, right? Like that, and it's really hard to change the conversation to working on the business aspects. So like that tech stack discussion in the beginning is sort of a little bit of a compromise to get some of that tech talk out of the way so we can transition. I'm gonna toss it over to Amanda. What do you got?
So I'm curious, you talk about a lot of hard work. That seems like a lot of things to go through. The fundamentals are often like kind of the hardest thing to do, right? So I'm curious, you mentioned your peers, you mentioned that sort of accountability. What was it that kept you so motivated? And we're not bringing you on for a reason. You were really successful in the Phoenix peer group. So I'm curious what you can attribute to that, to that success. What was it that kept you going and made you come out so well on the other end?
Yeah, I guess it's a couple of things. One is the desire to succeed, right? You just want to be successful at what you've ventured to go out and do. But I would say also, it's hard not to use a sports analogy of when you start getting wins, that just gives you more inertia and desire to keep going after it. You see, as you get these lessons learned and think about again how daunting or confusing it was before you started, and then light bulbs starting to come on and why some of this stuff makes sense. It keeps you going. And again, I just kind of came to that mindset of these are people that developed a flight plan that is from accomplished leaders of similar organizations. In my head, I just went, just do what they say. I believe it. I'm not over exaggerating where I would say I was kind of hanging on every word, just that advice, that direction, that experience. Hearing Rex's war stories, and he's got plenty of them. Learning from the mistakes of, and I've certainly made plenty myself, but hearing others and those war stories about what went well and what didn't go well is very helpful. But I guess to answer your question, the two things is desire to succeed, the interest to not recreate the wheel, and the want to learn from people who have preceded me and have had a good success record.
I think it's a Mark
Yep.
Twain quote. I apologize to the world if I got this wrong, but it's something along the lines of is experience. Good judgment comes from experience, and most of that experience comes from bad judgment.
Yep.
Absolutely. Jeff, talk to me a little bit about, when we were talking last week about some of the relationships, and not to get too far ahead, but when you kind of changed groups, you kind of graduated or kind of grew and moved on up, whatever you want to call it. You talked about some of the relationship that you're maintaining with peers, but talk to me about what is different about is relationships with other members of the peer group and why that has such a big impact versus friends, family, or people at conferences you meet and get make friends with. What's different about or unique about these relationships?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you start the peer group, and as we started in the Phoenix group, there was a good number of us, and you see the people who are serious about it, and you see people who kind of fall off for whatever reason, right, wrong, or indifferent. They have a different path or don't have the desire to stick with it. So you see those who are committed, and when they and sticking with it, and you form a bond. You really form a bond, and we would see each other in the Phoenix group at the Pax8 conferences, and then there'd be breakouts where you're breaking bread together and having the opportunity to really get to know each other. And this isn't used lightly. I consider them brothers and sisters, and you get to the point where you realize who's good at what, and you would call someone whenever, 24/7, say, man, I am stuck. I'm stuck on this. I got a client doing that. I know you're great at this. I hate to bug you, but would you be willing to help? And it's just crazy how everybody was so willing to help each other. Um, with everything. And I actually was a little sad leaving the Phoenix group because of the connection that I have with that group. I'm still invited to the meetings. I still email and text with a good number of them, and it's just now that I'm into another group, it's back to my capacity. I wish I could do both, but I tell you, definitely think of it as a fraternity of brothers and sisters that you are really connected to, that you get into holding each other accountable. We start talking about mission, vision, goals. What are your goals? Presenting to the group, and then saying, oh, by next quarter, you should have those things completed. We got to, then you have to present on that. You're like, geez, go back to when I didn't have to answer to anybody versus now I got a peer group. I got to go back to the peer group and say, did I do it or did I not? I'm one that wants to say, doesn't ever want to say I didn't do it. Even if it's a week to week commitment, I wasn't the guy. No, I don't have it done. There's a lot of power in that.
I
Very
that
powerful.
accountability aspect is huge, and I'm going to let Chris talk to that in a second. But I wanted to hit on the flight plan a little bit. Like you kind of mentioned it. We talked about tech stack at first, but then we get into everybody needs to make a business plan, and we go through how to make one, and then we send everybody off to go make their business plan, and then come back and present it to the group, right? And that's one piece of the accountability. And then we all work on your contracts, right? And then we all work on defining your offering, and then we all work on, and there's just this constant series that everything builds on the foundation we built the week before, all the way through the flight plan until you hit the $1 million in revenue, right? And um, you know, Chris, do you have anything you wanted to highlight on the accountability aspect of these groups?
Well, like the joke, Jeff and I, we've talked about the impact, and I think that we talk about focus and intent in peer groups, and it gets lonely at the top, and sometimes doing things in an isolated, in a bubble. But the accountability piece, I think, what's really powerful about that is that you're around others that want you to succeed, that they're also emotionally removed from your business. So they're a little bit more in a position to give critical feedback. And that
Yeah.
critical feedback, well, why are you doing that? Hey, you said you wanted to go here and end up here. This looks like a distraction, calling those things out in a supportive way. And I think there's that vulnerability and intimacy. And, I think that's one of the things that Jeff and I talked about capitalizing on. And back to you in that question, Jeff, um, like you said, you did not want to show up to that meeting, saying you hadn't done that thing. Tell me a little bit about your contributions to the group and what you did with your peers, and in particular, I want to kind of call out the hiring. Before you joined the groups, you had a hire that maybe wasn't as successful, and I think the
Yeah.
group, in hindsight, allowed you to process that and avoid that mistake. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I think of a couple of things. One, a term that kind of lives in my personal and professional life is, you need to get what you give. And we try to do, we kind of live that in our personal lives, and we live that in our professional lives. And it relates to Pax8 in these peer groups and their participation. You get what you give. So, you don't want to just be kind of sitting, spinning your chair as other people are presenting during that hour and a half. Listen attentively. And if you have feedback, give it. We all agree in that, that golden rule that we're going to be respectful. This is all in just trying to help others. And where you think you have a competency, I tried the best I could to give constructive feedback to others and received it as well, which was really great. And so an example of that story is, I made go back to my corporate experience. One of the things that we're mostly technical people, and maybe slide more to the introverted side of the scale. And we talk an awful lot about how to get sales and close business. Prior to joining Pax8, I hired a VP of sales, and long story short, 7 months later, I fired the VP of sales because it just didn't work out. And when I joined the Phoenix group, we James Levine, who's still part of the program, was a fantastic facilitator. And when he got to know me well enough, he just kind of crossed his arms and gave me one of these, shook his head, and just said, "You didn't need to do that, and you probably shouldn't have done that. You were not big enough to do that at that point in time." And that was direct feedback that I loved. I'm like, "Yes, James, where were you?" Or it was just poor timing on my part. I shouldn't have done it. I did, and it didn't work out. I didn't vet it correctly, and he said, "You're the salesman. You're the guy that closes the business until you get to a certain size." And he was right. And had really built those chops over time. But that was a lesson learned that, gosh, could have saved me a ton of money and probably a couple steps back in the experience.
That's sort of a big part of so many of the academy members. There's like close to 50 people in Pax8 Academy, and we collaborated on this flight plan when we were creating it. And there's a lot of things like, oh, they got to read the book Traction. It's like, well, wait, do they need to read the book Traction in 0 to 1 million? Right? Because that's about running a leadership team. And it's like, well, maybe there's parts of it, right? But there was a lot of negotiation. Like, okay, this is a thing you have to do to grow your business to $1 million. But does it go in the startup phase, or does it go into the 0 to 250,000 phase, or does it go to 250 to $500,000 phase? And like we spent a lot of time really talking through, wait, do you have to do that before you do this? Or does doing that too early actually harm the growth of the business, right? And we spent a lot of time sciencing out what order do we do these things in to create that flight plan. So,
Amanda,
understood. I was not going to jump in on that, but I could tell that you guys took great, I'll call it angst in the agenda, and it was evident, and I think you guys cared just as much as we did on just putting a fantastic content out there. So for sure, that was experienced on our side.
That's amazing. I think so. The program is only as good as what you put into it. So we talk about this word graduation. Chris is very excited about it. We're all extremely proud of you. So I want to hear about how you graduated from Phoenix. Where did you end up next? Did you leave Pax8 never to talk to us again, or what happened?
Yeah, so surpassing $1 billion in revenue is something that takes you to the next level, and within the peer groups. And I guess I was fortunate to be the first one to graduate out of our group. I think a lot of that comes with luck. I think a lot of that comes with right place at the right time. Maybe some of that comes to doing some of the right things, because it slowly gets to the point that you're dealing with a little bit of different issues. And so conversations with the facilitators was just like, would I, and do you facilitators see that I may get more out of graduating to a group with a larger organization, maybe dealing with different issues as you grow larger. And so, long story short, another group was being formed of those at that next level. We have been now meeting, I'm going to say, probably pushing 4 or 5 months. And once again, I wish I could say Rex was paying me to say this, but he's not. I've gotten so much out of this group already because of what we're all dealing with similar problems. And I had that first meeting, and only 4 of us attended, and I'm a copious OneNote taker, and I just couldn't stop typing about what are they dealing with, what problems are they working with, what solutions are they using to solve problems, process issues, client issues. And we literally just last week, Chris was referring to it, our new group Orion with the other peer groups all met in St. Louis, which the commitment is now meeting, is it quarterly, isn't it, Chris? Face to face?
Three times a year.
3 times a year. Okay. And the value that you talk about, a commitment, right? I couldn't be busier right now, but in the middle of it, I know the value I'm going to get out of it. Just last week, spent Thursday and Friday in St. Louis and left going such time well spent with these peers who I'm already connecting with. And, again, not only do we sit all day, we listen to some presentations, but more importantly, just talk with each other about what are the things we're experiencing, what are our challenges, how are we solving those challenges. And the ideas that I'm getting back is just phenomenal, and already feel really connected to this group and the value that it's providing. So, I couldn't speak higher of the experience, and we'll make the commitment. There's nothing more important when we talk about working on the business than these types of activities, because this is how you're going to learn, grow, and succeed.
And that's
Well,
a
there's the
very
sound
common.
bite.
Yeah, I'm going to listen to that repeatedly. It fills my cup just to hear. This is why we do what we do, right? And to hear these stories coming out of that's the impact we're looking for. But what you expressed there is just so, starting accountability meetings and that kind of feeling of, I can't afford to be here. Like, I've got stuff back at the office. I got people I need to kind of guide and tell what to do and manage. I got client things and that. And then at the end of 2 days, you're like, I can't afford not to be here. Like
Right.
that commitment to being there and working on the business is so powerful. And obviously you've seen the benefits. Can I put you on the spot and, what would you tell somebody else that's kind of on the fence or evaluating it or going through that same angst of, I can't take the time, I can't commit to these things, it's too much time away from the things I need to do and work on, and if you could talk about that a little bit, what would you say?
Yeah, it's kind of echoing some of the stuff I already was talking about, in that it's like working out. I need to work out today, right? I got to get to the gym. Gosh, I don't want to go to the gym. I mean, it's a commitment, and you got to realize how important the commitment is and the value that comes from it. My experience has been, the stuff that I've learned through the peer group has been so hugely strategic, that I'm not sure how long it would take me to chart the same path without getting what I've learned through the peer group, through some of the curriculum. I guess one story I'll tell you, and maybe this is something that will echo with others possibly listening is, we would talk so much about how do you get sales, how do you grow, how do you close business, how do you price your products, but more going back to that, we were buying leads, we were doing email campaigns, we were doing follow-up emails, hundreds of those a week, banging our heads against the wall, and not getting many sales out of it. And so one of the things we went through was Pax8's training on the result selling framework, which is kind of a paradigm shift. And through the training, it was really what you want to, what is your target client profile, how many clients, how many endpoints, what industries, and then really be present within that industry. Go to conferences, solve unique solutions for that industry, make sure they get to know you. More importantly, if you can pull it off, get in front of people and you be that voice of expertise as relates to whatever unique problem you solve for that industry. And we totally changed how we do our sales process. Gosh, prior to that and not learning that through the process, I just really struggled with how that sales process should look and how we should do it. And we're seeing results. So at the end of the day, this is where you go get that education, you put it to practice, and then you see the results. And that's what drives let's keep doing it, right? Let's just keep doing it and get more results.
Mm-hmm. And that traction that kind of feeds it, it kind of fuels that energy from that win, fuels the next piece of work to get to the next one. You'd mentioned that before, and I love that. Another question. So we like to kind of explain to people the value drivers of peer groups and what you get, what's your return on investment. And we use the term Spark, and so of the thing I'm going to talk about with Spark very quickly, what do you think has been the most important? How would you prioritize what you've, gotten? Which drivers had the most impact to you? Support, emotional and practical. P is that perspective. Somebody else is, just turning the lens a little bit. A is accountability. We talked about that. R is the resource sharing, and K is the knowledge sharing or collaboration. So if you don't mind putting you on the spot again, of using that Spark for the value drivers of peer groups, which has had the biggest impact for you, do you think?
I've told others, like, I'm not the most technical resource in the room. I've had some decent business leadership responsibility, and that's kind of what I bring to PivIT Strategy. Knowledge has been a great one for me, but learning from other people more on the technical side, and maybe hopefully I've helped others with business leadership, financial leadership, which are key success factors. So one of those was knowledge. I'd say knowledge was a big one, not only from my peers, but from my facilitators that kind of were very, rightly so, direct and sharing their knowledge and experience with me. Support, those days, talk about, lonely at the top when you got a problem you can't solve and you're not real sure where to turn. I tell you, my peer group has been there for me every time. And the first time you do it, you get a little surprised and you feel like, gosh, I really hate to bother you here, but man, I would love some help with X, Y, or Z. And then it turns into everybody helping everybody, that spirit of collaboration and support, where support is another big one that I feel is was part of that. What was the P? What's the P stand for?
Perspective, just seeing something through a slightly different angle.
Yeah, I would say that's another big one, because it's kind of interesting. People are also not in your backyard, so they're throughout the United States, and people are doing things completely different. Some great on the Mac platform, some really great with servers and networks. Everybody does this business a little bit different, even though it's very much the same. So there's different perspectives has been very helpful, looking at the lens of from everyone else's perspective. And then I guess I'll end on accountability, because I can't say that every one of them has been as important. But as I mentioned, I'd get the homework, and if it wasn't for that accountability, knowing that I had to come to the session and didn't want to be the sheepish guy that said I didn't get it done, even though you don't get browbeat too hard. It really was pushing me to get things accomplished, get things completed. And it's not, I guess, let me reiterate, don't consider it homework. Consider it making great strides in improvement with your business. So I always framed it that way, and this certainly was my experience as well.
That's amazing, Jeff. Thank you again for being on the show, Jeff from PivIT Strategy. Again, we are so proud of your achievement and your movement from that very prescriptive peer group, Phoenix, to more of our standard peer group. We're at Orion, that graduation. So proud of you. Thank you for sharing your experiences today. We loved having you on. Don't be a stranger. And yes, round of applause. Yes. Thank you, Jeff. Up next, we have an amazing sales pitch from Keith Marciano. So take it away, Keith.
In baseball and other major sports, the league may consider expansion teams. This means that a new team would start up in a new city, and the organization would have to build from the ground up. There would be struggles along the way and growing pains, but with a goal of building to becoming a winning franchise. For MSP owners, this is very similar. In growing the business to reach that first $1 million in revenue, it's going to be challenging. What I've seen in my MSP career, and also as I coach MSP owners, the sales is the challenge. So let's touch all the bases on what the MSP owner who's starting up can do to hit their first $1 million in revenue. 1. Develop a target client profile or unique selling proposition. Who you're going to sell to and what value you provide. Start with kind of looking at, hey, what size range of clients do I want? Maybe start by selecting 3 target industries to go after. Then once you figure that out, go chat with your clients and ask them, hey, by providing IT services and technology, how's that improved your business? What business problems did I solve along the way? What results did I deliver? 2, referrals. Go talk to your clients and develop centers of influence. Tell them who your ideal client is and ask them to introduce you to them, to vouch for you. Get a quick chat meeting, no longer than 5 minutes, and be a resource to them. You're not trying to sell them anything, just get introductions. 3, networking, not IT networking. Get out from behind your desk and go where your target clients go, to events. Your time is valuable, so measure the results when you do this. Go to target industry events or join a CEO/executive group of some sort. 4, join a peer group. Get out of your bubble and go speak with other MSP owners who are trying to get to their first million. Or go talk to other MSP owners who are striving toward their second million in revenue and ask for advice. What did they learn along the way? You're not in this alone. Building a company is hard. Getting new business is hard. These 4 tips are not easy, but they're proven to get you results. Go to academy.pax8.com and look for the Result Selling Framework Hub. There are on-demand courses on how to execute these 4 tips. Join a Pax8 flight plan peer group. We have Phoenix and Eventus peer groups for MSPs trying to get to that first $1 million in revenue. We're here to help and provide you the resources and assistance that you need to grow your organization, to be a winning franchise, and to achieve your first $1 million in revenue. Then go and help you get to $2 million in revenue and beyond. It's time for you to make it happen.
great sales pitch as always, Keith. Thank you again to our guest, Jeff Wolverton. We'd really appreciate you being on the show. Be sure to check us out on the 28th. Our guest will be Chance Weaver, so we'll have some good stuff to talk about. Remember, we are live every other Tuesday, 2 p.m. Mountain Time, always on demand. And don't forget to subscribe, like us on YouTube. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.